Well, thank you everybody for coming. Good morning. We are here to introduce House File 1 and House File 2. Two of the key legislative priorities for our new House majority, but also for some members who bring in not only practical but academic experience in working with these. I'm very proud to talk about the issues that we campaigned on and exactly what we're going to legislate on. We're looking at the priorities. We've talked about time and time again, making Minnesota more competitive, making it a better place to do business, a more competitive place to do business, but also in a way that, again, maybe not the most sexy issue in the world, but permitting and the regulatory process. So to introduce House File 1, I'm proud to introduce our new freshman. He start at the top with 1A, Mr. Dan Fabian.
Thank you. Nice suit, by the way.
Yeah, we called each other.
Thank you all. Hi, I'm Dan Fabian. I'm the newly elected representative from House District 1A. For those of you that are not familiar with 1A, it includes Roseau County, Kittson County, the eastern half of Marshall, and a small part of Pennington County. And as I said in the Education Committee meeting the other day, a small part of southern Manitoba, which of course, some of you, that gives you a little geography lesson. I'm here today to introduce to you the Streamlining Permitting and Environmental Review Bill, House File 1. This is a bill that we said in the campaign, it's about jobs. It's about making government more responsible and more responsive to the people of the state of Minnesota. And I'm proud to say that this is a bill that I think that can be bipartisan. It's a bill that's filled with common sense, in my opinion. And it's a bill that's, obviously high on the radar. The reason for this bill is because the permitting process at this time takes too long. We would like to be able to speed that up. And with that being said, part of the reason that we've lost so many jobs, and in my part of the state, jobs go across the Red River to North Dakota. I'd like to see the stop of that. I'd like to see those jobs stay either in my district or at least in the state of Minnesota. There are three key points to this bill today. First of all, we'd like to establish in this bill a 150-day window in order to be able to get the permits processed and into the hands of the agencies that are going to make the determination as to whether or not to grant the bill or to deny the bill. The second part of that is we'd like to eliminate the step in there that would take the district court out of the process. Instead, if there's an appeal that's filed, we'd like to take that directly to the circuit court, and then, the appeals court. And then the third step there is that we would like to allow the contractors to contract directly with the company that's going to be doing their environmental impact statement so that we can speed up the process and hopefully get these projects online more quickly and get the jobs working here in Minnesota more quickly. And with that, I'd also like to say tomorrow I'm traveling to Hallock, Minnesota. Thanks to Governor Dayton. He's been very gracious in inviting me along on the trip up there. They're opening a new, or not opening, but they're breaking ground on a new canola crushing plant that's going to have a tremendous economic impact on Kittson County and northwest Minnesota. I'll be traveling with Commissioner Landwehr as well as Senator Stump. I hope to be able to spend some time with them tomorrow and go through some of the details of the bill and create a bipartisan atmosphere with this bill. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Well, no, but we're going to go to... Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. You're a freshman. We'll freshman. I'm going to introduce, before we get to Matt Dean, he's going to introduce House File 2. We have our two jobs focus committees, Commerce Chair Joe Hoppy and our Jobs Committee Chairman Bob Gunther. Matt will introduce House File 2 for you as well.
Thanks, Kurt. And House File 2, like House File 1, will be a continuation of what you heard along the campaign trail and going out and meeting with folks all across the state of Minnesota. We heard spending and jobs, and we're going to focus now on the spending side with our administration and our great freshman King Banyan, as promised. I said if you wanted to see Wayne Gretzky on the first day that he stepped out onto the ice legislatively, this is our Wayne Gretzky for the economy, King Banyan. And we've got our Herb Brooks here. We got a coach here. How long you been coaching?
34 years.
34 years. So we got Herb Brooks and we got Wayne Gretzky, our all-star freshman. We got Gump Worsley over here. You know him, but but we're going to introduce House File 2. House File 2 has to do with spending. It has to do with really changing the tone in terms of how we do our budgeting. Traditionally, our agencies have come before us and they've said status quo plus inflation plus a little bit more. We're going to really change the tone on that, and with the change in the economy comes a change in time. I think that no better person than the legislature can not only usher through this piece of legislation, but also educate folks like me and others in the legislature on the process and on moving it forward. And we're very, very excited for House File 2 and its great freshman author from St. Cloud, King Banyan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Go ahead. Your way.
And before we start, I should point out, I don't skate. I'm absolutely terrible at that. I'm King Banyan. I'm a professor at St. Cloud State University. Been in the economics department there since 1984. I represent the north and eastern portions of St. Cloud and Haven Township. This bill is about some very basic economics. Thank you. Rookie. You know, it's very basic economics. The word economics derives from two Greek words, which translate to household management. And when you manage your household's budget, you learn how to live within your means, you learn how to set priorities. What we're going to do is to take that concept and bring it to the state legislature. We are going to do the state budget by asking folks to do priority-based budgeting, which means that we are going to ask folks to, instead of looking at an agency or a department, we're going to ask them to look at a service and ask them, how do you provide that service to us? How much does it cost? Who do you serve? Compare us to other states so that we have some benchmarking. Those are the types of activities that I believe priority-based budgeting will bring to the system. We're going to bring that up, and it will be ready to go for the next biennium. We're working on some ideas on how to bring it to this biennium. You may hear about that from the leadership here after I'm finished. Then also within this bill is a concept that we've talked about in the past, that I talked about on the campaign trail, which is a sunset provision. We live in a world in which things change at a faster and faster rate. And yet we still have commissions and agencies and regulations that have been there for 20 to 30 years, and people can't remember how they got there. So what we're going to do is that every 10 years we're going to ask a nonpartisan Office of Legislative Auditor to prepare us a list of those agencies and regulations that are defined within the statute to do a review of them and to establish whether or not there should be reorganization or perhaps even elimination. Those will still be determined, of course, through the legislative process. At the end of the day, it's up for us to decide and take responsibility for changes in regulations and changes in commissions. But to have that review happen on a 10-year rolling basis is the main concept of this bill. So there are two parts of this, priority-based budgeting and a sunset commission. I am very pleased, and I thank the leadership for giving me the opportunity to champion this bill before you.
Great. Questions, folks?
From the leaders, when the senators were here earlier, they said it's going to go through the committee process, and basically the bill won't be decided, one bill won't be decided until the end of the session, and it may not look anything like what it does to start out with. Are you determined to keep these bills pretty close to the same?
Yeah, I mean, from our standpoint, again, fulfilling our commitment to the voters that we made last fall. These are the things that we promised to make Minnesota more competitive that we would look at from day one. And for the business owners across the state of Minnesota, this is what they have told us from every corner of the state, you know, from Dan's area all the way down to the southwest Minnesota near Representative Gunther, is we're competing with our bordering states, but we're competing across the country. And if there is something, and fully understanding, Senator Bach had a great point the other night at the business roundtable that we don't always have the same issues as other people because we have 10,000 lakes, so there are some things that we have to do a little differently. But if it's making us 6 months, a year, or 2 years more uncompetitive, that's something we should address right away. So to the point of keeping it pretty close to the vest, this is something we worked on with the Chamber of Commerce as well, something that the Governor's office has indicated is something that at least they're willing to consider what we've heard in the ramp up to when the Governor was sworn in. So we're going to be real aggressive in moving it very quickly and moving it through our process because, again, this is not only a message to the voters who sent us here, but also to the business owners, the men and women across the state of Minnesota that want to expand here in Minnesota, but for one of these rules, regulations, permits, whatever it may be, is keeping them from doing that.
You have a timetable?
Yeah, just from a process standpoint, both of these bills are very important. They're cleared for takeoff, and the committee chairs are scheduling first hearings immediately. But also particularly on the priority-based budgeting, we're not going to wait for that bill to be passed to enact some of the ideas within that, working with the agencies and the Governor on the budgets moving ahead. We're not going to wait for that bill to pass to really start to look at the key benefits of implementing that immediately, not just for next biennium, but also for this biennium.
A specific representative on an EPS statement. If I'm building a plant, under your idea, I would then also hire the body that would do the study?
Yes.
Isn't that not a direct conflict of interest?
No, what they would do is they would hire the company to do the study, but the government agency is still the one that's going to have to approve the permit. They would still be involved in the collection of data and the supervising and so forth, but what we're trying to do is take that administrative step out of the middle so we can allow for more communications directly between the proposer and the company that's gathering the information for the EIS. Okay? We're not asking for changes in the standards.
On the speed up of doing the rules process, how do you catch up? Because one of the things we're talking about with zero-based is no government growth. And I would imagine right now there's a huge stack of permit requests in every bureaucracy in the state. How do you propose to get to zero-based processes so you can move to this 30-day?
Sure. Well, and I wouldn't say that I would agree with the statement that it means all cuts. One of the things that we've completely ignored in this process is, are we going to raise taxes or not? And what we should be asking, and what in King's bill, or Representative Banyan, sorry, we're going to look at it, and we're going to ask those who are in government, those who are providing the dollars to the folks, because it's, after all, it's a taxpayer's money. It's going back to the citizens of Minnesota. How have we spent it? What have we spent it on? And have we gotten the best value for it? And that's something that's missing around here. Is as Matt said, it's always, here's what we spent last year plus cost and inflation, and kick it down the road for the next year. We're actually asking those in a partnership with the folks that are in the administration, who are in the agencies, who are actually the recipients. Is what we're doing really getting us the best bang for the dollar? And if it's not, then we need to change things. And we asked at the Chamber dinner the other night, how many people in here haven't renegotiated a contract with the vendor in the last 5 years? 1,500 people, nobody raised their hand. I mean, maybe there's somebody in the back, but down to, I was out door knocking last fall. One of the folks I door knocked with said, we got all our neighbors together on the block and called our garbage collection company and said, hey, look, all 15 of us are here. We're going to switch companies unless you guys give us a lower rate. The economy's in kind of a hard spot. So now they pay $10 less for the garbage collection. That's something that the average citizen is doing. Why should we in government not make at least some of those little tiny changes like that on behalf of the people who are paying the bills?
Speaker Zellers, is a streamlined permitting process more important or more impactful than a corporate income tax reduction that the Senate also included in its first bill?
Everybody's got their own priorities. I mean, that's, personally, that's a favorite of mine. I've had the bill for, I think, 5 or 6 years down here. But we are talking about the things, again, the commitments we made on the campaign trail to the business women and men who we met with, who took their time out of their business day to come and tell us, here's what I need to expand in Minnesota. Like Dan said, or to stay in Minnesota. So I think it's just, priorities are to each their own. These are our priorities. These are things. This is the priorities with the Senate as well. We're just going to move them in different directions. That's fine. I expect it to move through just as quickly on our side as their side, and their bills on our side as well.
How do streamlined regulations create jobs? You say they're jobs bills.
Sure. Well, in a lot of senses, again, it's not something you flick a switch and all of a sudden the lights come on in here. But in a lot of cases, and this is not to repeat and reiterate here, this is what business owners have told us is keeping them from expanding here in Minnesota. In a lot of cases, our friends on the other side of the aisle will say, well, people, 3M's not going to leave Minnesota. And they may be right. The facility may stay here. God bless you. The actual plant and management facility will stay here. But what we want to be in part of the discussion, where we have not been for quite some time now, is the expansion. When is the next Scotch tape factory going to come here? When's the new insulin machine from Medtronic going to be here? So to be a part of that consideration, you've got to send this message that we're going to streamline things, make it simpler, absolutely keep in mind all the rules, regulations to make sure it's safe. But from a government standpoint, we're streamlining.
Also from the perspective of freshmen carrying bills. These are symbolic bills. What's the symbolism behind freshmen carrying what's supposed to be some of the most important bills?
Well, because they're way smarter than us. You heard, King?
Do they know the process better? They're better at getting it.
No, in a lot of cases, and I'll speak for Dan, but I'll also let him speak for himself, Dan's not a guy that's going to wait around for the process to work. He came down here with a mission. He's never been in politics before. 34-year teacher. He said, I came down here to get things done. I'm not going to wait for the ABC, how a bill becomes a law discussion. These are the things that he heard from business owners, especially in his neck of the woods, that this is what it means to them to stay in Minnesota, to expand. And Professor Banyan, I think that speaks for itself. If you haven't heard one of his lectures, you can watch them online, I understand, but he's a sharp, sharp guy. So these are we're putting two of our best feet forward on this. These are two of our best members, and we've got a great freshman class. You're going to see this across the board with a lot of bills, with a lot of initiatives. They bring their personal, family, business background into these bills, and they're going to do a great job representing them, but I'll let maybe Dan or King speak for themselves.
I don't want this to be a campaign thing, but I grew up in Fargo-Moorhead. And I can remember Governor Anderson being on the cover of Time magazine talking about the Minnesota Miracle. I'm now 56 years old. I have a little granddaughter. She's 15 or 16 months old. I want to see my granddaughter have the same opportunity when she's 21 or so, graduated from college, to be able to have the same opportunities that I've had. I can tell you from personal experience living in northwest Minnesota, we have 3 large manufacturers up there that were started by individuals. Marvin Windows, Polaris, and Arctic Cat. We also have DigiKey, we have Central Boiler that's now growing, and we have Matrax. These are companies that I have seen, the 3 that I mentioned first, that I have seen since I've moved there, have expanded their operation, but the expansion has come outside of Minnesota. And I want to see those jobs come back to Minnesota. Future expansion is critical to the economic vitality of the state of Minnesota. And I would love to see our Governor Dayton or one of our governors in the future be able to be on the cover of the Time magazine again, espousing the Minnesota Miracle, and Minnesota being the economic engine that drives the upper Midwest.
From your perspective, though, Representative, could you explain why a streamlined permitting process leads to jobs?
I can't explain that totally, but I will tell you this. Go out and talk to the business owners who have expanded outside of the state of Minnesota, and they will tell you why. And due in large part to permitting, regulatory issues, and those types of things. It is of vital importance to them. I know that personally, but I do not want to speak for those companies. Okay?
Do you think it's realistic to expect that some of these changes would result in companies bringing jobs back from Mexico or China?
I don't know about Mexico and China. We do live in a global economy, but I do know that we can compete against North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. I know that. We have done that in the past, and it's imperative that we do it again. And how else are we going to do it? If we don't try, how are we going to succeed? I'm not satisfied to sit here and deal with the status quo. We've got to get Minnesota moving forward again. The governor mentioned that the other night, and we all feel that way. My children live in Minnesota, some of them, and I want their future to be bright. I want my granddaughter's future to be bright.
Do you have any kind of an estimate as to how much these bills may cost to implement?
No, I do not. I'm sorry. I don't have that. Nope.
Am I right that this 150-day limit is a one-size-fits-all, whether it's a well somebody's trying to get a permit or a huge mine expansion?
No, it is not. We have this set as a goal, and we realize through the process that some permits are going to take longer to achieve. And one of the things that we want to do with this bill is allow the agencies who are involved and the proposers to get together and find out, so what has taken longer for this to get done? And see if we can't come up with some standards and so forth for certain types of projects that are going to take a little bit longer, and see if we can't sit down together and figure out, so how can we streamline that process? No, one size does not fit all here, and we're not trying to do that. These are goals. If you read the bill, they are established as goals. If the goal's not met, then we're asking for a report to tell us why the goal was not met.
Speaker Zellers, the Senate put the corporate tax cuts front and center in their first bill. You don't even have it in your first couple of bills. How are we supposed to read that? And where does the House stand on those kind of tax cuts?
Sure. Well, again, as the author of the bill, I think I've had a bill to repeal the business tax rate 5-6 times down here, and probably 5 different versions of it. Probably the last was to repeal it a point a year for 10 years, or for 8 years or 10 years, I think it was, over depending on how many points. I think that's important, but again, if we're, I think it's maybe more a little inside baseball. You know, for the rest of the world, they see us wanting to do, whether it's the House or the Senate, they see everybody at the Capitol kind of as the same. It's the politicians in St. Paul or the politicians in Washington. What we're trying to do with both of us, I would say, is send a message that not only to the business community, but to the people who work for these great companies, that your job is not only just safe in Minnesota, but we're trying to make sure that it's secure. If you want to stay and you want to make you want to get a promotion, you don't want to have to go and buy a pair of boots to move to Austin, Texas. We want you to stay here. We want the business owners to stay here. So from our perspective, I think it's more a little bit inside baseball. House File 1, Senate File 1. They're all in the same group. They're all at the top of our agenda, making Minnesota more competitive, making our business climate more competitive to our current job providers, and then bringing in some new folks as well.
And who's going to carry the tax cut bill in the House then?
You know, I'll leave that to Representative Dean. I don't know if I have the list in front of me, but I don't know. Actually, I don't know if we've announced that yet. It'll probably be another press conference to announce that as well.
Professor, on the priority-based budgeting, where we go through this 10-year, by the way, Econ 51 did not do well a long time ago.
Okay.
I apologize.
Chance to make up.
Okay. Every agency, MPCA as an example, it will justify its existence. It will justify each of its regulations. How does this work in a practical?
In a practical sense, it looks at every regulation. The agency itself could be justified by just 1 or 2 of the regulations that it manages and oversees, but it may have some other regulations within it that we would look at to reorganize.
Who does that?
That would be from the office. It would be suggested first by the Office of the Legislative Auditor. It would go to another. It would go to another commission. But eventually it has to come to us. We have to find, look, at the end of the day, there's an electoral check. If we remove regulations that the people of Minnesota want, we need to own up to it. So at the end of the day, there has to be a vote by the legislature.
At the end of 10 years, the legislative auditor, the state legislature, will have looked at every regulation that's in every book, in every corner of the capital of state government.
That's correct. Look, there's no doubt it's a lot of work. We do, and I don't want to minimize that, but I think it's what we owe to the people of Minnesota. Okay, if we're going to ask them to change the way they behave due to some regulation, or tell them that they have to answer to a commission or agency, we have to own up to the fact that we've asked them to do that and be sure that it's functioning in a way that we think is appropriate and follows the laws and statutes of the state of Minnesota.
Would the state, the legislative auditor in particular, have to add a lot of staff to do this? This is something the office is not already doing.
Well, I think it does a good bit of it already. I mean, would it expand the amount of work they do? Most likely, yes. I mean, so there will be some cost to it. I don't think it's terribly large, but we do think auditors provide useful functions in terms of telling us when things are going wrong. So I do think an audit is appropriate, and that if we do have to add staff, then we do have to add staff, and we'll get cost estimates on that very soon.
During the campaign, there was a lot of talk on mandates. That mandates would be sunsetted. I think if they could not be justified, or everything would be sunsetted, and then you'd have 5 years to prove whether they were justified. This is different from that, though. This is broader than that. It sounds like.
I believe I'm going to look actually at looked the wrong way. Sorry. I was going to look at my leadership just because I know that there are other bills out there. I can't tell you where they are in the process. I'm not aware of that. However, I would say even if those other mandates were not looked at under one of the other bills, they would eventually get looked at here. They would all be treated at one time or another, but some people may think we need to do it faster than 10 years. They may not like the order in which we've set up which ones get reviewed when.
And again, during the campaign, candidate Emmer talked about wanting to reduce the number of agencies. I think he was talking about all the way down to about 6 agencies. Is that the bottom line goal of this bill, is a reduction in agencies?
No, and to your point, there's each individual, school groups, school districts, superintendents have got a mandate relief bill, League of Minnesota Cities, counties, everybody's got a mandate relief bill. And we're not going to wait for the big picture to come in if the folks who deal with it each and every day come to us and say, these are the 5 things if you could get rid of or help us with that we don't have in our water, we don't have in our soil, nothing like this is going out in our air, why are you making us test for it? Those things are separate from this. And the goal isn't just to cut down the number of agencies or employees or the statute books. The goal is to make sure, as we talked about, Bob brought music. The goal is the same thing we talked about on the first day of session. I said we are going to respect each and every taxpayer dollar, looks like it was our own, spending it at our own kitchen table. This is to make sure that the taxpayers are getting the best bang for their dollar, that it's in these tough economic times when they're having to do with less, either through pay cuts or job loss, government should have to do the same thing that they're doing.
We have time for one more. And then
Okay, Mr. Speaker, on the security issue, it's become a big issue here today, obviously, because of what happened on Saturday. Is that something that might move up the agenda a little bit, just to at least review what the Capitol Security Complex looks like now?
Governor Dayton has said earlier today, I guess, announced to you all that he was going to have us, House Senate leadership, get together with him and have a full security review. I think it's a great idea, and we look forward to that.
Should there be more money put toward sworn officers maybe guarding this building?
We're going to wait for the governor's meeting to let the experts, and we do actually have more staff on than we have in the past. This is something that our Sergeant at Arms office, the Capitol Security, does all the time. Whether or not an event happens like this, they're constantly reviewing processes, security measures. So we'll attend the meeting with the Senate and the House leadership and the governor and have an assessment there. Let the experts do it instead of us talking about it kind of on the fly like this.
Would your goal be to keep the building as open as possible, accessible to people?
Sure. This is the people's house. We want to make sure our government is is open, accessible to folks, but make sure that when citizens come here and legislators serve here, that they're safe and secure.
Do you have strong feelings on metal detectors? A lot of Republicans have been cringing when they heard that word.
Wait for the governor's meeting.
You don't have a strong reaction to that?
Any tinkering with gun laws at all do you see coming out of this?
We're going to wait for the governor's meeting with the House and Senate, the assessment there. Once we listen to those folks, let the experts give us their assessment, then we can talk about it later.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.